The broadcast of the regular meeting of the Heritage Preservation Commission will now begin.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this live broadcast of the virtual meeting of the Heritage Preservation Commission. This meeting is being conducted in a virtual format where members are participating via telephone or other electronic means as authorized under Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021 due to the declared local health pandemic. We will now introduce Chair Sundberg to convene the meeting.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this live broadcast of our virtual meeting of the April 21st, 2020 regular meeting of the Minneapolis Heritage Preservation Commission. This meeting includes remote participation. For the record, my name is Madeline Sundberg and I serve as chair of the Minneapolis Heritage Preservation Commission. I will now call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll so we may verify the presence of a quorum.
Bjornberg.
Present.
Fritz.
Present.
Howard.
Present.
Kling.
Present.
Johnson.
Present.
Mack.
Present.
Sandbolt.
Present.
Stady.
Here.
Sundberg.
Present.
Vandereyck.
Here.
That's
Let the
everyone. Thank you.
record reflect that we do have quorum. With that, we will proceed to our agenda, a copy of which was posted for public access to the City Legislative Information Management System, which is available at lims.minneapolismn.gov. Our first order of business is to adopt the agenda for this meeting. So we'll be working from the agenda that's available online. I will go through the agenda and sort out the items, which will be which items will be continued to a future meeting, what items will be discussed, and what items will be put on the consent agenda to be approved as recommended by staff and without further discussion. So item number 4, which is 800 Washington Avenue North, Ward 3. It'll be continued to the May 5th, 2020 meeting. Item number 5, 606 Washington Avenue North, Ward 3, which is a certificate of appropriateness to install signs and canopies. That is recommended for consent unless someone wishes to speak in opposition or to modify the staff recommendations. Are there any commissioners that wished to speak on item number 5? Okay, I don't see any. Were there any members of the public who wished to speak to item number 5? I don't believe so, but no?
No, there's no one in the queue to speak to these.
Okay, then it will be on the consent agenda. Item number 6, which is 406 11th Avenue Southeast. That is recommended for discussion. I believe there are people wishing to speak to item number 6, so we'll leave that on as a discussion item. I hear somebody. Does somebody want to talk?
Oh yes, this is Barbara Camp.
Did you wish to speak to item 6?
You'll have to press *6 to unmute, caller.
Members of the public who wish to speak to item number 5.
Yes, I'm just going to speak later in the agenda.
Okay.
Barbara Cam at item number 6.
Item number 6. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 7 is 410 11th Avenue Southeast, which is also recommended as a discussion item. Are there any callers wishing to speak to item number 7? You'll need to press *6 to identify yourself.
There are 3 callers in the queue who've indicated they wish to speak to items 6, 7, and 8.
Okay. I think that clarifies it then. Item number 8, which is 1103 4th Street Southeast, also recommended a discussion item, and it sounds like there are people who want to speak to that too. So the proposed agenda is the consent item of 606 Washington Avenue North, Ward 3, which we will approve the consent agendas in one motion at the start of the meeting. Items number 6, 7, and 8, which is 406 11th Avenue Southeast, 410 11th Avenue Southeast, and 1103 4th Street Southeast, will have a staff presentation, public comment, commission discussion, and action. And then item 4, which is 800 Washington Avenue North, will be continued to the May 5th meeting. Commissioners, may I have a motion to approve the proposed agenda?
Commissioner Vander Eyck moves to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Vander Eyck. Do I have
Howard.
a second?
Howard
Thank you.
seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Howard. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll on the motion.
Bjornberg,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Howard,
Aye.
Kling,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Sandbolt,
Aye.
Stady,
Aye.
Sundberg,
Aye.
Vander Eyck.
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you.
the agenda is approved. Our next order of business will be to approve the minutes from our April 7th, 2020 meeting. May I have a motion to approve those minutes?
This is Mac, so move.
Thank you, Commissioner Mack. Do I have a second?
Howard will second.
Thank you, Commissioner Howard. Any discussion? With that, I will ask the clerk to call a roll on that motion.
Bjornberg,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Howard,
Aye.
Kling,
Aye.
Johnson, Mack,
Aye.
Sandbolt,
Aye.
Stady,
Aye.
Sundberg,
Aye.
Vander Eyck.
Aye.
That's 9. Thank you.
The minutes are approved. Okay, before I open the public hearing, let me summarize the process for conducting it in this virtual format. First, we will act on any items that are being continued. Then we will act on the consent agenda that we just set. Once the items on the consent agenda are approved, the commission is done with those items, and applicants may contact planning staff tomorrow for next steps. After the consent agenda items are approved, we will take each remaining agenda item in order. First, planning staff will present its report, and commissioners may ask questions of staff. Then we will hear from the applicant, and the commissioners may ask questions of the applicant. After that, I will open the public hearing, and we will invite public comment. We'll be taking speakers in the order they pre-registered, if any, and speakers will be limited to 2 minutes. We ask that after your name is called, you state your name and address for the record, and then we proceed with your comments. After we've completed the list of pre-registered speakers, we'll see if there are any other speakers in the queue who may have called in. In order to activate your microphone, you'll need to press *6 on your phone. And please keep your comments to the specific applications that are before us today. After the public comments are complete, I'll close the hearing. The commissioners will deliberate and act on the applications before us. Okay, so may I have a motion to continue item number 4, 800 Washington Avenue North, Ward 3, to the May 5th meeting?
Commissioner Vanderwyk moves.
Thank you, Commissioner Vanderwyk. Is there a second?
Second, Sandbolt.
Thank you, Commissioner Sandbolt. Any discussion? With that, I will ask the clerk to call the roll on the motion.
Bjornberg,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Howard,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Kling,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Sandbolt,
Aye.
Stady,
Aye.
Vanderwyk,
Aye.
Sundberg.
Aye.
That's 10 yay. Thank you.
Thank you. That item is continued. I will now open the public hearing on the consent agenda item, which is number 5, 606 Washington Avenue North, Ward 3. Again, is there any opposition to the staff recommendations for this item? Any commissioners? Any members of the public? Seeing none, I will now close the public hearing on the consent agenda item. May I have a motion to approve staff findings and recommendations for this item?
So move. This is Mac.
Thank you, Commissioner Mack. Is there a second?
Second, Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll on the motion.
Bjornberg,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Howard,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Kling, Mack,
Aye.
Sandbolt,
Aye.
Stady,
Aye.
Vanderwyk,
Aye.
Sundberg.
Aye.
That's 9 yay. Thank you.
Thank you. The motion passes. Item number 5, 606 Washington Avenue North is approved as recommended by staff on the agenda. Applicants for that item may contact planning staff tomorrow about next steps. Okay, items for discussion. Our first item is number 6, 406 11th Avenue Southeast. And just so the commissioners understand, I asked that staff kind of present an overview presentation on all 3 demolition permits since they are a related application. But then we will be voting individually on each item after the staff presentation. So the staff report will be presented by Rob Skalecki. Oh, and I'm seeing that Jesse Kling is recusing himself for items 6 through 8, so he is stepping out of the phone call.
Great. Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Rob Skalecki. I'm a city planner in the Historic Preservation section of CPED. Today I'm presenting 3 demolition of historic resource applications for neighboring properties in the Marcy Homes neighborhood. The first application is for 406 11th Avenue Southeast. The building is a 2.5-story Queen Anne style home constructed in 1901. The property was designed by William Kenyon and built by Edward James Davis for Mary Loughran, who is the owner. Could you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Constructed of wood frame, the house is clad in wood siding and includes a cross gable roof, bracketed soffits, flared barge boards at the eaves, and timbering in the gable. The building is a prominent a front elevation polygonal bay, historic 6/1 and 9/1 wood sash windows, and a characteristic 2-story projecting bay on the north, which is the side elevation. All of these express a clear connection to the Queen Anne style. The house was surveyed in 2002 as part of the 2003 University of Minnesota Greek Letter Chapter House Designation Study. The consultant, Landscape Research, noted that the property had good integrity and was one of 6 houses at the corner of 4th Street Southeast and 11th Avenue Southeast that were used as fraternity or sorority chapter homes at various times throughout the early 1900s. However, the house was not included in the final district boundaries. The property was not recommended for further research as well in the 2011 Historic Resources Inventory for the Central Core as prepared by Mead and Hunt. CPED staff completed a historic review letter of the property in March 2019 and determined that the property may be a historic resource. Could you go to the next slide, please? Landscape Research LLC prepared a determination of eligibility for 1103 4th Street Southeast, 406 11th Avenue Southeast, and 410 11th Avenue Southeast in June 2019. The study recommends that the properties may be eligible for local designation under Criterion 6 as a small group of speculatively built houses designed by William Kenyon. Next slide, please. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing building and construct a 65-unit apartment building on the corner land that includes the subject property, as well as 410 11th Avenue Southeast and 411 4th Street Southeast. Next slide, please. The city of Minneapolis considers William Kenyon to be a master architect. He was well known for designing upper and upper middle class single-family dwellings based in revival styles of the era. The subject property is one of 6 extant homes on the corner of 4th Street Southeast and 11th Avenue Southeast, designed by Kenyon, built by Edward James Davis for the property owner Mary Loughran. The 3 homes proposed for demolition are the most typical of Kenyon designs. They represent 3 different but compatible architectural styles and retain the greatest integrity. The city has already designated properties that are characteristic of Kenyon. Landmark Kenyon properties include the Chase Residence, the John G. Glick House, and the Phi Kappa Psi Fraternity at nearby 1609 University Avenue Southeast, which is a contributing resource in the University of Minnesota Greek Letters Chapter House Historic District. Next slide, please. Minneapolis City Directories confirm that 406 11th Avenue Southeast began as a single-family rental house, became a multiple-family residence by 1907. Between 1910 and 1933, the dwelling was home to at least 7 sororities and 2 fraternities at different times. The property has served as an affordable, high-density student rooming house for over a century. Next slide, please. It's just a Sanborn map from 1952 that kind of shows the longevity of that. Next slide, please. Thanks. The subject property retains integrity required to be a contributing resource. The interior has been highly altered, but that reflects the dwelling's history as a rental property. There are minimal changes that have been done to the exterior, and it retains good integrity overall. However, in CPED's review, the subject property does not individually seem eligible for local designation. The property is not directly associated with the lives of significant persons or groups. It does not exemplify a landscape design or development pattern. It is not likely to yield more information important to prehistory or archaeology, so thus it would not meet criterion 2, 5, and 7 respectively. The property does not have enough significance under criterion 1 for events or patterns of history to merit designation. There are many extant properties throughout the university neighborhoods that continue to convey a student-centered residential history. The property has served as an affordable, high-density student rooming house for over a century. Homes of this type are representative of the continued residential history of the student population in Dinkytown. There are many individual properties that are extant and continue to relay this history. Thus, the property is not significant under criterion 3. The property was designed in the Queen Anne style, but it's not an exceptional example of this style and would not be considered significant under criterion 4 alone for architecture. And the home is more modest than other known and already designated William Kenyon properties. It's not an exceptional example of a William Kenyon home. Therefore, it's not individually significant under criterion 6. Moreover, the city has already designated properties that are characteristic of Kenyon. Much of Kenyon's work still exists and is represented throughout various neighborhoods in Minneapolis. In CPAD's review, 406 11th Avenue Southeast is not listed or eligible for National Register listing. The property does not appear to be individually eligible for local designation. The Department of Community Planning and Economic Development recommends that the Heritage Preservation Commission adopt staff findings for the application by Garrett Duncan of North Bay Companies for the property located at 406 11th Avenue Southeast and recommend to approve the demolition of historic resource. I will be open for questions if any of you have any. Thank you.
Thank you for the report. Are there members of the commission who would like to ask questions of staff?
I have a question, but maybe I should wait till the other two are presented because it relates to all three of them. Linda Mack here.
Linda, I think because we have to vote on them in order, even if the question relates to all three, we should probably answer the question now.
Okay. The more I look at these three houses, I certainly see the reasoning of your conclusion that they are not individually worthy of listing. But the relationship of the three and their common history as rooming houses, as you say, for more than a century in this area. They were built for a woman developer, which is kind of interesting. And so I wondered if you had thought about the possibility of considering them as a group, and that their commonality and their sort of happy coincidence of different styles that work together so nicely, and the exterior integrity has been maintained amazingly well over all these years, that it could be a tiny little district, or that somehow grouping the three of them together would give them that kind of oomph that they would need to be considered for designation.
Right, that's a good point. The properties came in individually, so we evaluated them individually as different historic resources as they were determined individually. So we evaluated them as such, and alone as individual potential landmarks. They would have not merited that designation, if that makes sense.
Yes, I understand that. But I guess my question is, okay, well, what about another approach? And so that's my question.
Oh,
Sure.
Sorry, Linda, can you turn on your camera? We're hearing you, Linda, but not seeing you.
Yes, is it on now?
Yes, there you are.
Okay, sorry.
Thanks. It looks like Andrea Burke might want to speak to your question, Linda.
Okay, I will turn mine off.
Hey, this is Andrea Burke, the supervisor for the historic preservation team at the city of Minneapolis. Yeah, Linda, that is an option, and we can consider those as a district. And we can let that come out during discussion about the items after the applicant and any members of the public have wanted to speak. But yes, that is an option to consider these as a district. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for staff? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Rob, did you have any? Do you have slides set aside for each item?
I do. I have just a few photos set aside for the other ones.
Okay.
But yes, I do have presentations as well for those.
Okay. I realize that we need to vote on each individually, but I'm wondering if it would make the most sense if we're thinking we might want to consider this as a small district. If you could briefly show us those, or if that kind of disrupts the cycle.
I believe you'd have to act on this one first because it is an individual.
Okay.
So you would have to either approve or deny this one before we can maybe move on to the next ones.
Okay. Then I think I don't see any additional questions. Thank you for your report. And I'm wondering if I will open the public hearing for the item. And is the applicant here and would they like to speak? If so, please press *6 to activate your microphone so we can hear you and state your name and address for the record.
Hello, this is Carol Lansing. I'm here with for North Bay Companies along with Scott Nelson of DJR Architecture and Amy Lucas of Landscape Research. And I think I would like to have Scott address you first regarding the conditions of the buildings.
Okay.
So can everyone hear me?
Yes.
This is Scott Nelson, DJR Architecture. I'd just like to talk a little bit about the condition of the buildings, especially on the inside of the buildings, outside to some extent too. But the truth of the matter is the buildings they're in pretty rough shape. I mean, they've served as student housing for, as we've heard Rob describe, over 100 years. The interiors have been renovated several times to add more units. You know, currently 410 has 14 units. They've been renovated into the first floor would have 5 single rooms and a shared bath, which this would have been the room that was currently or originally living, dining, kitchen area. Second floor also has 5 single rooms and a shared bath, and the third has 4 single rooms and a shared half bath. So they've been massively renovated inside and used as rooming houses for a better part of 100 years. They've also had to have new stairs installed throughout on the back so that each interior hallway could have access to 2 main exits, which seriously affected the inside structural capacity of the building. So it's been shored up in the basement on several occasions. The existing heating system's been majorly modified throughout the years to go from what was a single family house to serve, you know, what's now a 14-unit student housing project. In addition, none of the rooms, first floor or any of the restrooms are accessible at all. None of them, and I'm speaking kind of in general for this one, but really all 3 are very similar. None of them would meet any of the current housing codes. There's no fire alarms. A number of the stairs that were added to the inside of the units to provide secondary egress, those are not those wouldn't meet current accessibility codes as well. Some of the ways that they were divided up, there's a shared kitchen that serves all 14 units. In the case of 410, it's actually in the basement, so everyone has to go downstairs. And for 406, it's on the main level, and on we can talk 1103 if we do discussions on individual units. But just as a summary, though, they're all in really rough shape, having served as rooming houses for roughly 100 years, and there's very major work that would need to occur to the mechanical systems alone if they're going to continue to operate in this manner. How do I unmute myself?
Oh, this is
or
Carol.
Unmute myself.
Okay, this is Carol again.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
If you want to mute yourself, just press *6, please. Thank you.
And this is Carol. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Now that Scott just dropped off, if you have any questions about the estimates, we did get estimates for the cost to rehab these buildings back to, to code compliance and basic, functionality. They were done by a qualified person. They did look at them in terms of maintaining the current rooming house type of use, and it's just prohibitive. North Bay bought these not long ago. They aren't responsible for how the buildings got into this condition, but it isn't an investment anybody would have made to rehab them, to keep them operating in this function in a way that's livable and appropriate for people as tenants. And I think Amy Lucas is also available and has a couple comments.
Okay.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Amy Lucas, and I am the historic consultant that completed the report with Landscape Research. I'm available for questions on all three of these reports, and I'll just speak briefly to Commissioner Mack's question about a potential district. I did not spend a lot of time surveying all of Kenyon's houses in Minneapolis and beyond. He was prolific. The district discussion did come up, and we did kind of work through that. As you know, in the report, these three houses were completed by Kenyon, as well as the fourth, facing 4th Street, 1107 4th Street, which has very low exterior integrity. But beyond that, and I listed this in the report, and I didn't provide photographs or do an in-depth history or analysis of all of Kenyon's properties. But Kenyon designed a large chunk of Lowry Hill, houses with high integrity, and built for specific owners who tended to live in them a long time. In Lowry Hill alone, on Colfax Avenue, there are 4 houses, almost in a row, that he designed. Then there's another house behind it on DuPont, another one behind it on Emerson, and 2 more on Girard. So if you're ABCDing Lowry Hill and the alphabet, they're almost contiguous houses, 8 of them that he designed, with very high integrity. That being said, Kenyon's own houses, he designed 2, one in Lowry Hill and one on Lake Harriet, also remain today and also have high integrity. So if there was a Kenyon district, I thought there was potential for a Kenyon district, maybe elsewhere. Secondly, I didn't get into this too much, but I think a lot of the researchers on the commission may know a little bit about this. Many stalwarts in the community of Minneapolis, men, would use their wives on a lot of documents. I could not prove that Mary Loughran was the developer or that her husband was the developer, but it is not uncommon among many building permits and titled deeds that the women are listed on them. And I like the story that Mary Loughran was a developer, and I don't know if that was necessarily the case and how much her husband was involved in that. But I'm available for questions, and I would be happy to take more, but I'll sign off now.
Thank you for your comments. Commissioners, are there any questions for the applicant? Anybody?
This is Linda Mack again. I'm confessed I'm having trouble toggling back to my staff report, and I'm wondering if Carol might be willing to, or Scott, to go through the construction estimates, a summary of those, or staff, whatever.
Carol or Scott, do either of you want to address the cost estimates?
So I'm trying to pull up the staff report here myself. When you're looking at the construction estimate sheet, I actually can't get to that one myself. I wonder if Carol can, or if she has access to a better computer.
Or how about Rob?
I will check.
And I'm available for questions if someone can pull it up.
Commissioner Mack, did you have a specific question about them?
Well, as I said, I can't, there's probably some way I can get to the staff report, but Carol has said the estimates are prohibitive. I just feel like I'd like to know the numbers, house by house or however they did them.
Okay, I am scrolling through the extensive number of pictures we attached to this report.
In the staff report that I have, it is starting on page 20 of the staff report, if that is helpful.
Oh, yeah, that is, thanks. Okay, so for 406-11, the total is $572,911. That includes contractor's fees of $56,000 and contingency of $46,000. It anticipates that the windows all need to be replaced, and doors and exterior and unit entry doors, flooring needs to be redone. I think there's some, mechanical. There's a comment I've seen about specialty appliances. Well, that's just the way, it's not that it's high-end work, it's just that on this estimate form, they have categories. One is specialties, and that includes, mirrors and bath equipment and appliances. It's routine things. It's not fancy stuff. The HVAC repair is $60,000, and to bring fresh air to each unit, that's another $28,000. So I just kind of cherry picked some of the bigger items, but it is really quite expensive for each one of these buildings to bring them to code, and to make them, something that you can get an appropriate rent for the work that you'd have to do would be too much. I mean, the rent would go up huge.
Would this estimate be for keeping it in a similar layout with shared restrooms? Or is this making it more similar to the proposed new design with more like micro apartments, but like within the existing footprint?
I know it was to renovate it in the same layout configuration in terms of bedrooms and shared facilities. For bathrooms, Scott, were they going to add any bathrooms? I didn't think so. Or kitchen and accessible bath. So I know that to have an accessible unit, there was some additional, another kitchen and bath, but I'll let Scott chime in.
Thank you. Yes, we looked at basically bringing them up to what a current housing code would be, which would basically renovate it in place to keep the same number of units as much as possible, which was true on the first two, but potentially not on 1103. But it would add accessibility features so that you would get an accessible unit and an accessible restroom on at least the first floor. But other than that, it was basically a renovation in place and bringing everything that exists up to current codes.
Okay. Linda, does that answer your question?
Well, yes, for one of them anyway. There's a figure which is helpful, and I'll try to get back to my staff report. But I'm wondering if Scott could do a quick calculation as to square foot cost on just that one that we have the number for, 406 the 11th Avenue at 573,000, basically.
The square footage, it's 30. That 406 is 3,400 square feet. So what was that cost? Because I don't have the report.
573,000.
That's $168 a square foot.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? Okay, it does not seem to be any more questions. Thank you for your comments. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to the public comments. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this application, we will take the list of the pre-registered speakers in order and then open the floor to any other speakers who may be in the queue. We will ask each speaker to provide their name and address before they make their comments. And when recognized, when the clerk calls your name, if you could please press *6 on your phone to activate your microphone so we can hear you. With that, I'll ask the clerk to identify the first speaker in the queue.
Sure, go ahead. The first speaker is Barbara Kam. Caller, please press *6.
My name is Barbara Kam. I'm on the executive board of the Marcy Homes Association, and I live at 423 7th Street Southeast. A letter has been submitted to the commission from the association regarding and requesting that the certificate of appropriateness for demolition be denied. I'll address items 6, 7, and 8 together. The project was rejected by the Neighborhood Association's Land Use and Development Committee on February 4th. Based on our concerns about its impact on the historic character of the area and the loss of affordable housing. The 3 houses, as has been said, are part of a centuries-old and ongoing historic use in Dinkytown, in which rooming houses were part and parcel of the fabric of the community. Our position is that the buildings should qualify under significance criterion 1, 3, and 6. Criterion 1. They represent social patterns and cultural trends associated with student housing and Dinkytown with relation to the university. Converted from single-family homes to house student populations, sorority and fraternity groups, and lower-income workers and professionals, they were intended to meet the needs of the burgeoning University of Minnesota student population, which went from 308 in 1880 to 5,369 by 1910. Criterion 3. The 3 buildings have served as affordable high-density student living for over a century. The representative of the residential history of the student population in Dinkytown and the distinct elements of Greater Dinkytown's residential identity. Criterion 6. These houses, designed by master architect William Kenyon on the corner of 4th Street and 11th Avenue Southeast, may be among the best-known examples that communicate the academic-centered residential history of Dinkytown. We know that a number of his buildings have been landmarked. With regard to these Kenyon-designed buildings, North Bay and the staff have stated that they could be demolished without destroying his legacy, but it's our opinion that an architect's body of work should rather be considered as a continuum, preserving the history of that work. North Bay states that the cost to perform needed renovation work exceeds the economic value of the property. However, their business is new development, not rehabbing. We would be most interested in seeing more specifics about the comparison of costs for the proposed building with those for the rehabbing of the current property in detail. We ask that the applications be continued for all 3 properties until such time as we can have an appropriate community conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Commissioners, are there any questions regarding the Marcy Homes Neighborhood Association position? I know we received a letter, but I just want to make sure if anybody has any questions. I don't see any. Thank you for calling in. Are there other members of the public in the queue?
There are no further callers in queue at this time.
Okay, thank you. Seeing that there are no other callers at this time, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, let's discuss. Are there any concerns or comments on the proposed application? Which, as a reminder, this is specifically for item number 6, 406 11th Avenue Southeast, although I think we can discuss them somewhat more cohesively if that's the preference. Commissioner Howard.
Hello, you can hear me and see me. I just wanted to say that I think it's important that we need to consider the entire career of architects, not just the high style homes that are designed for rich Minneapolitans. And I think that to better engage with renters and students in our community, we need to recognize that they have significance too, and that their history is significant. And I'm also intrigued by the fact that this was a female developer or not. And I don't know if Amy's still listening, but thanks for pointing that out as part of your conversation, because that is one of the concerns that I had. I would like to know more about that relationship and the relationship between Lockrid and Kenyon. So those are just a few of my thoughts. I look forward to seeing what my fellow commissioners think.
Thank you, Barbara. Is there anybody else wishing to speak?
Well, here's Linda Mack again.
Linda, can you turn your video on?
I'm sorry. Okay, there I am. I'm struggling with this for a couple of reasons. One, of course, our current situation and the difficulty of having a community-wide sort of conversation about something, but the neighborhood group has made pretty clear their position. So that weighs on me. I think that's an important consideration. And I realize that North Bay is not interested in renovating. They didn't buy these properties to renovate them. And yet the cost of renovating the one, and I've only got the one on my those figures for one, isn't outrageous when you look at the square footage cost of it. And it is an interesting sort of piece of history. And so, and the as you drive through the neighborhood and you drive by them, they catch your eye, you know, not because they're great houses, but because they have that, again, the commonality of the three of them. It certainly contributes to the landscape of the neighborhood, just in scale and so forth. I know that's not supposed to be our concern, but there you go.
Thank you, Linda. Are there other commissioners who'd like to speak?
This is Commissioner Stady. Could I speak quickly?
Yes. Can you get your video on?
Hi. So yes, the economics of the situation right now is really weighing on me. I was not on the commission for the last recession, but I can recall projects that were started in the city that may have been a demolition where then the developer didn't have the funds to build anything. So I'm really quite reserved about demolishing buildings at this point, considering that they may not get replaced. with the economic situation we're in right now.
I think that's a good point. Other commissioners wishing to speak? Commissioner Bjornborg.
I just want to say that I really kind of agree with what Barbara said about the importance of looking at the work of this architect as a whole. So while there are great examples that are already recognized, I think that also recognizing this kind of renter and University of Minnesota connection is really important. And I would also like to see more about them as a grouping rather than individual.
I was also thinking that they would make a really interesting small historic district potentially. Commissioner Vander Eyck.
Thanks. Yeah, so I guess this is a question clarification for staff. I know that Andrea said that we could consider them as a potential small district. So I guess if we were to opt to deny demolition, then procedurally would we be directing staff to explore their potential designation as a district? Just wondering kind of procedurally how that might work, since some of the comments that I'm hearing, and I agree with everything that's been said.
Correct. If you deny it, you would have to proceed with some sort of study. And if you would want to do it as a district, you would just have to make that clear within your direction and within that action to deny the demolition.
Would that be an individual commissioner sort of kind of nominating, or is it as simple as directing staff to complete a study?
If you deny the demolition, you will have to direct staff to study the property. So within that, you would have to direct us to study it as a district if you are hoping to go that route.
This is Andrea Burke to speak. Forgive me, my chat function is not working, so that's why I could not let you know I wanted to talk. Yeah, we could help you craft some language if that's the direction you decided to so move. Let me turn on my video, forgive me. We would craft some language in terms of, yeah, you would have to deny the demolitions, and then you would have to vote to establish interim protection, and then commence staff to cause to be prepared a designation study on those 3 properties. And we could help you with some language for that, should you decide to go in that direction.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Howard.
I was just curious, could that direction go beyond just the 3 properties? It sounds like we have 6 properties that are Kenyon designed and associated with the same developer. What are the ramifications of going beyond just the 3?
This is Burke again speaking. I will turn on my video. In this case, because these are the only 3 that were up for application, those 3 would kind of have to be separately nominated in order to include those as part of the district, because these are the 3 that are being heard at this point. I confess I don't know the exact specifics of that how that would happen, but those would have to be nominated perhaps in a separate action or motion. But I can look it up here as we're talking. But
could they be part of the study without being nominated separately?
I'm not actually sure. I think they could be part of the study. I mean, at this point, our staff often, as part of surveys, we will make recommendations, or consultants will make recommendations around properties for potential study areas for districts, and then we will move forward with putting all of those properties under interim protection to then study as part of a larger district. That doesn't always mean that the district gets listed in the end, or if it gets all the properties within the study area get put under, but they would get put under interim protection with it, if that helps.
It does, thank you.
Are there any other commissioners wishing to speak? I think I personally would be interested in exploring a small district in this area, centered, especially if it turns out there is some sort of interesting relationship with the developer and the architect at that time. But also, I think, at least to me, I agree that we often end up saving the most architecturally beautiful houses, especially, but that there is something to also saving the ones that, yes, they do kind of look like the rest of the more historic areas outside Dinkytown, and that's also important. It looks like staff member Burke would like to speak.
Sorry, one more time. I just would want to say that we can stray outside of what's been included as part of these applications. It wouldn't, I will be honest, I think it would be kind of tricky to do that, and how we would go about that in a meeting. But as you guys know, we can drop nominations in a meeting at any time. But in order to go in that direction, just to be sure to make findings for this, these projects in order to overturn staff recommendation. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm wondering, Andrea, would we need the specific addresses of these other houses that we're considering adding into our theoretical district?
Yes.
Is it possible to scrounge those up?
I will ask staff, Rob Skolecki, to come up with those.
Okay.
But do keep in mind, like, these property owners have not been.
Yeah, they don't know what's happening.
They don't know what's happening. And so that's where I get a little uneasy with that, because I don't feel like they've had a fair chance to speak to it, even though I know nominations are not always, we don't notice for them, and they can happen in the middle of a meeting should commissioners choose, but that's just my opinion on that matter.
Okay. Commissioners, I'm wondering if anybody has a motion in mind at this point, or if they would like to continue the discussion. Commissioner Johnson?
Hey, quick question, Madeline. You alluded to adding houses or houses to our theoretical district. Are you talking about the other houses on this block that North Bay is thinking to develop based on the preliminary or the renderings in the report?
I think it is Commissioner Howard who maybe mentioned that there were 3 other nearby houses by the same architect for the same female developer. It was in the staff report, but I don't remember specifically which houses or where exactly they were located.
Yeah, the staff report didn't have the information spelled out really clearly, or the consultant report didn't. So my concern is for the other houses that were designed by Kenyon for Ms. Loughran or her husband, depending on what that development relationship is.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any thoughts?
Okay, I'm working on some findings. This is Linda.
Okay.
Sorry, it seems like this is all harder than usual, but I guess I personally feel like it's problematic to try to include something that is not before us in this motion. And so it seems like what's before us is, and now are we voting on one of these? We're voting on 406 11th Avenue South, right? That's the motion we need. Okay, so
that's correct.
I'm going to try this. It's very much open to friendly amendments or discussion. But the findings would be that there are reasonable alternatives to demolition. There is not the need to address an unsafe condition. The exterior integrity of this property is decent. And this building, in relationship to the other two under discussion, could merit designation as a different, as a non-high style residence that Kenyon designed, that has served the Dinkytown neighborhood as a rooming house for over a century. I don't know if anybody's able to get that. I hope so. I've got some of it written down. Did anybody get those findings? Those are the findings I would suggest.
I got those findings down, Linda. Mr. Max, thank you. I will, forgive me I'm going to jump in one more time here. If you need help with the language, if that is the direction of the motion you're going, essentially it's our standard language for denying the demolition of a historic resource application for the property at, in this case, it would be 406 11th Avenue Southeast. It's kind of a three-part motion, as you are aware of, establishing interim protection and directing the planning director to prepare, to be prepared a designation study for, in this case, if you choose to go for all three, a potential historic district to include the properties located at 406 11th Avenue Southeast, 410 11th Avenue Southeast, and 1103 4th Street Southeast. And therefore, you would then repeat this motion for the other two properties for those items as we bring them up in the hearing subsequently.
Thank you. Can we propose that motion?
Is there a second to that motion?
This is Howard. I'll second.
Any further discussion? Okay, I don't see any further discussion. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Bjornberg.
Aye.
Fritz.
Nay.
Howard.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kling. Oh, he recused himself. Mack.
Aye.
Sandvolt.
Aye.
Stady.
Aye.
Van der Eyck.
Aye.
I'm sorry, that cut off a little bit. I wasn't sure if it was a aye or yay.
Yeah, aye, yes, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Sundberg.
Aye.
That's 8-1.
Motion passes. Okay. So that concludes our first item. Our second item, the related item, is 410 11th Avenue Southeast. Staff report by Robert Skolecki. Did you want to show your few slides?
Yeah, I'll just add a bit more too about this one in particular. I'll try to cut it down just because we got through most of the background information pertaining to the three, but the building is a 2.5-story shingle style home constructed in 1901. The property was designed by William Kenyon, built by Edward James Davis for Mary Loughran, who is the owner. It's constructed of wood frame. It includes a front gambrel roof with painted wood shingle cladding and a side cross gable. The gambrel shelters an offset entry and porch area. The west on the west elevation, protects the entry. A window bay is prominent and centrally located on the first story of the elevation. Many of the windows are 4/1 wood sash, but there's noticeable window replacements and glass block infill in some of the openings. The rear includes a small one-story addition at one of the corners, and there's a one-story alteration to an entry at the northeast corner that is covered with siding. City directories confirm that 410 11th Avenue Southeast began as a single-family rental house, as with the others, and quickly transformed into a multiple-family dwelling. By 1911, this particular dwelling was home to a worker and 2 boarding students. The dwelling turned into a Greek chapter house soon after, and became, soon after it turned into a dwelling house, Greek chapter house. So between 1915 and 1929, the dwelling was home to at least 1 sorority and 2 fraternities at different times. It returned to housing the general student population in 1929, as directories indicate, a mix of workers and students living there. And like the other 2 homes, the property has served as affordable high-density student rooming house for over a century. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing building to construct a 64-unit apartment building that is on the land that includes the other 2 parcels that are being looked at tonight. The subject property retains integrity required to be a contributing resource. Rear alterations and window replacements have left the building with fair exterior integrity, while the interior reflects the dwelling's history as a rental property. Property retains enough integrity, though, to clearly communicate its history. In CPED's review, the subject property, however, does not appear individually eligible for local designation under the designation criteria. The property is not listed in the National Register of Historic Places, and it does not appear to be individually eligible for local designation. So the Department of Community Planning and Economic Development recommends that the HPC adopt staff findings in the staff report for the application by Garrett Duncan of North Bay Companies and approve the demolition of 410 11th Avenue Southeast. And I'm available for questions on that as well if you have any relating to this or any other questions that might have come up. Thanks.
Yes, thank you for your report. Are there any questions by commissioners specific to this property? I don't see any. Okay, I will now open the public hearing for this item. Would the applicant like to say anything specific to this property? If so, please press *6 on your phone to activate your microphone so we can hear you and state your name and address for the record.
Hello, this is Carol Lansing again. I certainly don't expect to change your approach on these next 2 buildings. I will say it bothers me that you are suggesting staff should study a district that isn't on any work plan, hasn't been identified through context studies, is just kind of an interesting, intriguing idea. And I think it's unfortunate that that's how that is being approached here. I don't think these are any more emblematic of the history of Dinkytown student housing than any other 3 houses in a row. So felt the need to say that to you. Otherwise, I think it's if you have questions for us.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any questions for the applicant? Did one of the other team members want to say something? I think I heard somebody call in. No, maybe not. I will now look for other public comments. Is there anyone wishing to speak for or against this application? Specifically, I know we had a caller for item number 6, but I don't know if we have any additional speakers on the line.
The only speaker on the line was for item number 6, though she did indicate she would refer to 7 and 8 as well, so I'm not sure if she wishes to speak at this point. Caller, if you wish to speak, please press *6.
I dealt with the 3 properties, so I'm content.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then I will close the public hearing and commissioners can discuss. Or if we're feeling like we want to maintain a pathway, if you want to make a motion. Andrea Burke, would you like to speak?
Before making a motion on this one, you'll have to make the findings again to overturn staff recommendation.
Okay.
And if you need help, I've taken notes on those ones as well, but if you feel you have them, please let me know. Thank you.
Commissioner Mack, would you like to reiterate the findings in motion? Or
Yes, I gather I'm the one who's going to do this. Happy to have help if anybody wants to, but let's see, what I have is my findings are that there are reasonable alternatives to demolition, that the exterior integrity of this building is decent, and that this building in relationship to the other 2 could merit designation as a non-high style residence designed by William Kenyon as a spec property and serving as student housing for more than a century. I think that's what I did for the findings.
I think there was also something about it not being unsafe. Is that?
Oh, there are no reasonable alternatives to demolition, and there it is not needed to correct an unsafe condition.
Okay, I think that's everything.
Thank you, Madeline. And then the motion, I think Andrea has. I really don't.
Andrea, can you repeat the motion for us?
Yeah, I can repeat. I would take notes just to make sure it's you guys have it, but essentially it is to, in this case, deny the demolition of historic resource application for the property at 410 11th Avenue Southeast, establish interim protection, and direct the planning director to prepare or cause to be prepared a designation study for a potential historic district to include the properties located at 406 11th Avenue Southeast, 410 11th Avenue Southeast, and 1103 4th Street Southeast. Thank you.
Thank you. That sounded correct to me. Commissioner Mack, does that match what you feel your motion was?
Yes, and thank you so much. I appreciate the help.
Okay. Is there a second?
Howard will second again.
Thank you, Commissioner Howard. Any discussion?
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Vandereyck. I just want to make a comment just for the record, kind of in response to the applicant's quick comment. Just to clarify from my standpoint, the reason that I am in support of this designation study is because I feel strongly that that it's worth studying. Does not automatically mean that the projects, the buildings will be designated, but they are worth the opportunity to be studied. And so I just want to put that out there for the record, for the purposes of the record, as to why I'm in support of our motion.
Thank you. Are there any other commissioners who would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Bjornberg.
Aye.
Fritz.
Nay.
Howard.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Sandbolt.
Aye.
Stady.
Aye.
Vandereyck.
Aye.
Sundberg.
Aye.
That's 8 yay, 1 nay.
Thank you. The motion passes. Okay, that concludes our second item. Our third item is number 8, 1103 4th Street Southeast. Again, the staff presentation is by Robert Sklecki.
Thank you. The building is a 2-story colonial revival home that was constructed in 1901. The property was designed by William Kenyon, built by Edward James Davis for Mary Loughran, who was the owner. It's constructed of wood frame. It's clad in wood and includes a side gable roof with a centrally located dormer on the south elevation. The front elevation includes character-defining 2-story ionic entryway with a triangular pediment and decorative windows above the entry. The west elevation shows its original open porch that has been infilled with wood siding. And there's a projecting bay on the south portion of that elevation. The elevation includes, the east elevation includes a small first-story oriel window. The north elevation has a central secondary entry with a small ornamental pedimented window above. All of these features are indicative of the colonial revival style. City directories confirm that 1103 4th Street Southeast began as a single-family rental home and was home to a lawyer, Loren Collins, and his family between 1902 to 1909. 1908. By 1909, Sigma Chi fraternity had moved in, and it remained at that address until 1915. City directories indicate that at least 2 other fraternities have been located at the property, and the house has been a rooming house since 1909. Like the other 2 homes, the properties has served as affordable high-density student rooming house for over a century. The applicant is proposing to demolish the building and construct a 64-unit apartment building on the corner land that includes the subject property as well as 406 11th Avenue Southeast and 410 11th Avenue Southeast. If you could turn the slides, please. I'm sorry, I realize there you go. I realize I've been skipping over that. The subject property retains the integrity required to be a contributing resource. Many windows have been replaced with aluminum 1/1 sash, and there are some other exterior issues with integrity. But the interior of the property reflects the dwelling's history as a rental property. There is a clear association integrity-wise to communicate its history and express the colonial revival style through its features as well that are still extant on the property. In CFED's review, however, the subject property does not appear to be individually eligible for local designation under the designation criteria. The property is not listed eligible for National Register listing, and the property does not appear individually eligible for local designation either. The Department of Community Planning and Economic Development recommends that the Heritage Preservation Commission adopt staff findings for the application by Garrett Duncan of North Bay Companies for the property located at 1103 4th Street Southeast and recommend to approve the demolition of this resource.
Thank you for the report. Are there any questions for staff about this property? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing for this item. Would the applicant like to say anything specific to this property? If so, please press *6 to activate your microphone.
Carol Lansing. Scott, is there anything specific about this property that we should be pointing out? Otherwise, I would say, of course, we concur with staff's recommendations on both of these. And would prefer, of course, and urge you to not to approve the demo. But Scott?
Hello, this is Scott Nelson. The one thing about this one that was different from the other 2 that were renovated more uniquely is this one maintained 2 units in the first level, which had which was where the living dining kitchen was. In fact, the kitchen for one is in what was once the porch. And then the upper levels were renovated into 2 units, but they're 2-story units, each with their own stairs. So the whole mechanism of the way this one was renovated is different from the others and is much more difficult to bring to a code compliance that would meet with the current codes. The outside looks similar, but the inside was renovated in a much more different manner. And again, is really only 4 units, whereas the others were like 14. That's pretty much it, though.
And
Thank you for your comments.
The cost to renovate this is upwards of $626,000.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant about this property? Okay, I don't see any. I will open this up for anybody wishing to speak for or against the application. I believe we don't have any additional speakers, but just double check. Okay, it sounds like we don't have anybody wishing to speak. So with that, I will close the public hearing and commissioners can discuss. Or if you would like to just move forward and make the same findings.
I'm happy to repeat the findings unless other commissioners would like to make comments or discuss.
I don't see anybody.
Okay, so the findings that I would propose are that there are reasonable alternatives to demolition, and demolition is not necessary to correct an unsafe condition. The exterior integrity is decent. This building, in relationship to the other 2, could merit designation as a non-high style residence designed by William Kenyon and serving as a spec housing and serving as student housing for more than a century.
Andrea, did we get everything?
Yes, you did.
Okay. Linda, would you like to make the motion or shall I have Andrea read it?
Well, I would like to make the motion, but I would appreciate it if Andrea would read it because I don't have it down.
That's fine. Thank you, Commissioner Mack. The proposed motion in this case would be to deny the demolition of historic resource application for the property at 1103 4th Street Southeast, establish interim protection, and direct the planning director to prepare or cause to be prepared a designation study for a potential historic district to include the properties located at 406 11th Avenue Southeast, 410 11th Avenue Southeast, and 1103 4th Street Southeast. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Is there a second for that motion?
Howard will second again.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any discussion? I just want to say that I agree that it is a little unusual for us to just decide to study a small historic district like this, but that it would be somewhat a unique contribution to the historic districts we currently have. And I think that's part of the reason we're also interested in seeing what a study of this might bring about. And that, I realize it's going to cause the applicant frustrations, and I apologize for that portion of it. But I think it really is that we all want to see what could come out of this, not that we're trying to be frustrating. So with that, would the clerk call the roll?
Bjornberg.
Aye.
Fritz.
Nay.
Howard.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Sandbolt.
Aye.
Stady.
Aye.
Vandereyck.
Aye.
Sundberg.
Aye.
Thank you. That's 8 yay, 1 nay.
The motion passes. That concludes our public hearing items. As it came up in the public hearing discussion, I saw that Rob responded with the other 3 properties in the chat function, which is 1107, 1111, 1115 4th Street Southeast. Commissioners, I'm curious if there was a desire to separately put forward a nomination for those properties, or just to see where this study would come with the 3 properties as is. I guess maybe I'm addressing this to Commissioner Howard since you brought up the idea.
Then I guess I don't have to type into the chat box, right? I think we just need to recognize them as part of that study. I don't think putting a nomination forward is the appropriate thing to do at this point. But I think we need to understand whether the 3 properties that we just denied a demolition permit to, do those stand on their own, or do they stand as part of a larger district as part of that study? And that's part of creating the historic context portion of a study like this. And so, yeah, I don't think that a separate nomination is necessary. Obviously, if one of these were to come in now for demolition, questions would be raised by staff through the demolition permitting process as it is. So at least that's my thoughts. I don't know what other commissioners might think.
I agree that exploring the wider context, both of other nearby properties by the same developer, by the same architect, would be an important part of the context, but also probably nearby properties that were the same use at the same time. So I think I agree that I don't think a nomination is necessary at this point unless there's a commissioner that feels otherwise. Did anybody else have comments on that?
This is Commissioner Stady. Is there any sort of outreach we can be doing to the other property owners during this process without any official addition of their properties to the potential district?
I think it's difficult because this is Linda Mack. I mean, all we have at this point is the addresses. So I doubt that we should sort of stir up too much angst about it until we would at least look at them and have some evaluation of them in some fashion.
Yeah, I would want to make sure that we bring it to their attention early enough. I know I've done a few of the ones where we do outreach early on in a potential district study. And I guess I agree that we need to do a certain amount of due diligence before we contact them just to make sure they're even potentially eligible for a potential district. But I don't want this to come out of nowhere for them and them to suddenly find themselves on a list that they didn't know existed. So I guess I'd ask staff to, like, when it comes to a point where we know whether or not they might be eligible, that we let them know in a timely manner, just so they're not surprised and hearing about this, I don't know, in the news or something. I'd find that very alarming if it was me. I don't know, Andrea, if there's oh, yes, I see you now. You wish to speak. Great.
It's okay. During the designation study, staff can reach out. I mean, they wouldn't necessarily say that, hey, we're capturing your properties for this study, but it'd be something that staff would research and then, reach out to some outreach, as we do with some other historic district studies, to get the general neighborhood's opinion on them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did anyone else want to speak on that? or shall we move on? I don't see anybody else. For announcements, do commissioners or staff have any announcements or other commission business to discuss? I don't see anything. None from staff. Okay. Oh, Commissioner Howard.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't get it all typed in. I just wanted to mention for commissioners and anyone else who's listening, the Society of Architectural Historians is holding their annual conference virtually, and registration ends tomorrow. It's a really great deal. It's $100 to listen into 2 days worth of presentations, and there's some really good ones on the agenda. So if you're looking for some professional development, I know we all have way more than we can do on our plate already, but I'd take a look at the Society of Architectural Historians website for more information.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, I don't see anything else. There being no other business this meeting, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Commissioner Vander Eyck so moves.
Thank you, Commissioner Vander Eyck. Is there a second?
Commissioner Sandbolt, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Sandbolt. With that, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll on the motion.
Bjornberg.
Aye.
Fritz. Howard.
Aye.
Kling. Please still with us. Johnson.
Aye.
Matt.
Aye.
Sandbolt.
Aye.
Stady.
Aye.
Sundberg.
Aye.
Vander Eyck.
Aye.
That's eight.
The meeting is adjourned. The next regular meeting of the HPC is May 5th, 2020. Thank you, everyone.
I'd like to thank Madeline and Rachel and Andrea. You're just doing a super job.
Yeah, thank you guys.